Welcome, Freeport High School students and families. We have a guidance production here for you so you can follow along with us and learn some more about the process of applying to college. I'm Ms. Throg, here also with Ms. Clark and Ms. Pierce, and we're each going to speak to some important parts of the college planning process. We specifically chose the stress meter screen at the beginning. This is such a good chance for everybody to just take your pulse, check in with yourself, because this can be a pretty stressful time. And it's important to always keep those emotions intact, because at the end of the day, the work is going to get done and kids are going to go off to a great college. So the silly elephant is even wearing the mask. You know, one thing I have to say about this COVID experience is we've become more human than ever. We really have been. And so there are some silver linings with COVID, and we're all in the same boat. How has COVID-19 changed things? So again, because we're more human, most schools have gone test optional. So standardized test scores are not even required for most schools. We do encourage students to take a standardized test, the SAT, once or twice just to see how they do, because it is acceptable still to submit scores. And if you score well, it's still a good thing to send. But you don't have to, that's the good thing. College counselors also have great flexibility with student circumstances, you know, in regard to grades, courses on the transcript, extracurriculars that you feel like might be missing. There is great flexibility, and there is a chance for students to kind of explain their experiences, and counselors can do the same for students on their behalf. You're definitely not alone in this. Every single high school junior in this country has been affected. Everybody, from last spring all through until right now. We're all in this together, and you shouldn't feel alone. Everybody's in it. So I think the biggest thing to remember is just to trust that it will all work out, because it really will. The holistic approach when looking at college applications really helps kids a lot, because they can look a little bit more closely at the recommendation letters or the college essay, where the students can bring out something personal about themselves. And it becomes a much more holistic view than just looking at a transcript and GPA. So trust that it will all work out, because it will. And where do you begin? It can be a maze of so many different things to consider. All you have to do is begin right where you are. Wherever you are in this moment, that's right where you're supposed to be. There is no single right way to go through this process. We are here to support and guide students and families, and we can tell you that it's going to be okay.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Pierce, and in this next section, I'm going to talk to everybody about the college selection process. This is a process that can be super fun, and it's something where juniors will spend most of their time this spring and summer. Step one, I think the key to this is keeping an open mind. There are thousands of schools out there beyond the most well-known, mostly highly competitive schools that a lot of people hear of. As Ms. Throg suggested before, there are so many schools, and each one of you will get in somewhere great where you're meant to go. So what are some of the considerations for choosing a college? There are so many different ways to think about colleges. The first one we often start with is geography or location. Where do you want to be? Often students will come in and say, I want to stay in Maine or stay in New England. These are things that's very individual for students, and this is a great place to start to narrow down your search. Other considerations include size of a school. Do you want to be in a school with 1,000 students, or is it appealing to think about being in a school with 20,000 students? Major is another great consideration, and as well as including things like whether you want to be in a city or in a rural area. A great place to start are some of these college research websites. Here are 4 that many of our students over the past years have really enjoyed using to narrow down their search. You also should ask your school counselor, because we have so many resources for you and we can make recommendations for colleges that we think would be a good fit for you. In this day and age, another place where you can look for colleges are on apps and blogs. Some of these include some great free webinars for students, and this is just another place where you can look for your schools. And finally, college videos is probably the best way, especially during the pandemic, to get a feel for a campus. Many of these videos will do 360-degree tours where you actually can go on a virtual tour of a campus yourself, all from your own computer. And YouTube, of course, is a great place. You can just put in a search for a particular school. You can see student interviews in schools, faculty interviews. So this is where we suggest, once you start narrowing down, is to really get in and watch some of these college videos. So once you have a list of schools and you start narrowing it down, step 2 is actually trying to figure out, how do I visit some of these colleges and universities? And you do this through campus tours, open houses, and information sessions. You might be wondering, are colleges actually giving tours right now? The answer is maybe. Some schools are only doing virtual tours, but there are colleges who are open for you to go take a tour in person. Some colleges are giving self-paced or self-guided tours where you can actually go to the campus and they will give you an app and you can follow along on a tour that they would normally give in person. What you really want to do is Google and find out for each school what they're offering, and make sure that you pay attention to whether or not for virtual tours, if you should sign up for a virtual tour and take it in person and actually have a person live to help you with that tour. This slide gives an overview of some of the ways that you can do it, which I mentioned before. Google is your friend. And again, there are some tours that are in person right now. And this example of Bowdoin actually shows you that you can attend a live student-led virtual tour of campus, or you can take a self-paced tour.
So once you've done some research and kind of narrow down maybe some of the schools that you may have found interest in, now you create a balance list. And creating a balance list just helps give you some, a breadth of schools to access. So you're going to have your reach long shot schools. Those are going to be those schools that maybe the GPA is just a little bit higher than yours, or maybe your test scores are just on the cusp. So the reach is like just out of reach, but not ridiculous maybe to apply to. Then you have your good match schools. Those are the ones that like right in the zone. So your just right schools, when you're looking at a profile, which I'll speak to in just a minute, your GPA is in line with that freshman class that's currently there. Your test scores, if that is something that you're using as part of your application, are right in the zone. They're falling right within that middle 50% of the current freshman class, kind of what that range is. And then we also have those sure thing safety schools. It's always wonderful to have those on your list. Sometimes it's an academic safety, but other times it's a financial safety school. And that's important too, because college can be expensive. And so we want everyone to have an opportunity to go, and you should always make sure that there is at least one financial and academic safety school on your list. And again, I spoke to that freshman class profile, and I'll give you an example of that in just a moment. But that's really something to pay attention to, because that helps you when you're kind of looking for those just right fits. Again, being on the campus, seeing the students, interacting with people, that's ideal. But right now that's really hard. And so you've got to use your resources. And that freshman class profile is a really valuable resource to see kind of what that freshman class is made up of, and to decide if you kind of fit within that similar profile. You can Google. Again, we mentioned Google is your friend. It really is. So Google for that mid 50th percentile for standardized testing and GPA, because that at the very least can give you a ballpark of where you stand in comparison to the students that are currently there. You know, a frequently asked question we hear a lot is, how many schools should I apply to? And honestly, that's going to be different for everyone. For some of you, you're going to know there's this one school. I know it's a good fit for me, and that's the one. And you'll apply to that one and you'll get in and it'll be great. For others of you, you may want to apply to 5 to 7 schools. You may want to have a longer list, and maybe you do have that super balanced list where you've got a reach, you got a couple of matches in the middle, and then you definitely have that last sure thing on the end. And for some, you may want to apply to 10 to 14 schools because maybe you're applying to more competitive schools, and you need to have multiples in order to get into one of them, just because they're so selective that it could be a long shot for anyone. So really, it all depends on the person. One size does not fit all, but I always suggest that everybody give themselves some options. And so I spoke to this freshman class profile. And again, this is that mid 50th percentile for standardized testing and GPA. And so when they're talking about that mid 50th percentile, they're talking about the current first year students at the university this year. And so that's where they're getting those numbers from. And you can look that up again. It's on Google, and it's also within those colleges pages often as well. But it will tell you things like the acceptance rate. That's a really important number to pay attention to, because if that number is on the higher end, then that means that you have a better chance of getting in. But if it's on the lower end, then that can mean it's hard just for anybody. You can all have the same academic profile, but it's really going to be a matter of maybe who read your application that day or something that really set you apart from the other students if you're applying to one of those schools that has like a 6.1% acceptance rate. This is an example of one of those profiles. So you'll see at the top how many applications were submitted, how many were actually accepted, and then how they got that acceptance rate. You'll also see those mid-ranges for standardized test scores. You'll see some demographic profiles. You'll see if they were in a public or a private schools. All of that information is there. And every profile is different. They're all going to list similar information, but they may look a little different, or one might include more than another. So if you need to, again, we can't say it enough. Google really can get you those answers. But if you're missing something, don't ever hesitate to either give a university a call or reach out to your school counselor, because we might be able to find that information with you. We also have this resource list that kind of helps you keep track of things and helps you make sure you have one of those balance lists. So this college application checklist, which we will share in the student Google Classroom. We have hard copies here in the guidance office, and we're always happy to send electronically. It allows you to organize things, put your college's name in, what their application due dates are. Are they on the Common App, or do they have their own application? Are tests required? If they are, what's that score range? And again, that percent admitted. And this is going to help you give you a visual of what that list looks like. And something else we always want to share with our students is this really helpful tip for students and for families. Look beyond name brand. There are 5,300 colleges and universities in the United States. What matters most is what you do with your time once you're there. So this is a list of some really well-known, super successful people who went to a variety of universities. And you'll see that Melissa Smith, who's the CEO of WEX, went to the University of Maine. So you don't necessarily have to go to one of these name brand schools. Speak with your counselor, do some research. There are so many great fits for everybody. There is a fit for you somewhere, and try your hardest. We know it's hard, but try not to listen to what other people are doing and what other people are wanting. What's really important is what you want and what you need. There's a wonderful book, Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be, and it's by Frank Bruni, and it is a wonderful resource for families. So we encourage you all to take a look at that. And again, keep in mind that it's really what you make of your college experience, because all of them have wonderful things to offer you. So for the Freeport High School class of 2022, your application components, this may be on your mind. What are all the things that I have to do, that I have to get in? So the application, most of them are going to be on the Common App, but there will be a select few schools that either have their own application or they use other other websites, other use. There's a coalition application that some schools use. Either way, that application is key. Your transcript. When it comes to documents that have been following you, your transcript is the absolute most important component to your application. It is the record of everything you have done in high school. Especially with COVID, especially with not having test scores, your transcript has become even more important because it shows your school's, your academic profile. Have you been taking rigorous courses? Have you been challenging yourselves? Have you been performing? Are your habits of work grades, are those on the higher end? Those really do matter, and it is really important. Along with that application, most colleges will want an essay. If you choose to send your scores, your SAT or ACT scores, maybe AP scores, those will all be sent along. Recommendations from your teachers, recommendations from your counselors. All three of us will write a letter for our students, and every single student at Freeport High School applying to college will receive a letter from their college counselor, their high school guidance counselor. And so we want to be sure that we get that in for you. And then financial aid. Ideally, all of you will fill out your FAFSA, your federal student aid form. And then also some schools also require a school profile. So that will be important to find out. This is a sample transcript, just so you guys have a sense in case you haven't seen your transcript before. This will give you a sense of what we send to colleges. And you can see that it really is just a running list of the courses that you've taken, your semester grades, your final averages, and your year-end habits of work grade. It also indicates how much credit you earned. And then at the bottom, what you can't see on this is your cumulative GPA. And your cumulative GPA is in the 100-point scale, not on a 4.0 scale. So that's also something to keep in mind. These are some examples of the Common App essay prompts from this past year. Students have a great opportunity right here at Freeport High School to work on their essay in their English classes in the fall. It's just a wonderful thing that we do for our students. Our Writing Center teachers are just so good at helping our students with their college essays. So be looking out for those. They release those usually in the spring, and then the common application opens on August 1st. So this summer, if you're, you find yourself with some free time, it's wonderful to free write a little bit on these. I actually have had so many students found that the second essay they wrote was actually the essay they preferred. So if you go through that process once, it's like getting all the kinks out, and then the second time you do it, the work tends to be just so much richer and better. And then here's just a quick financial aid overview. We actually have Bill Smith on March 30th coming for a financial aid Zoom presentation. He's wonderful. He's a financial planner. He has helped many of our students as they look ahead to college and how to make all of that work financially. He is an invaluable resource to us, and so I highly encourage you all attend that. But also know that FAME Maine is a fantastic resource. They often do virtual presentations as well. They also have a support line. So if you're filling out your FAFSA form, which is that free aid from the government, that one is, that's the free aid form, excuse me. Sometimes it's loans, it will be loans and grants, but that's a form that all students should fill out. And then there's also the CSS profile. That application is actually through the College Board, and that one's used to determine eligibility for non-federal financial aid. So that's just one, when you're looking at colleges, when you're looking at what their application components are, find out if they use a CSS profile, and then look for what that due date is too, because that will often be different from the FAFSA. The FAFSA itself is available as of October 1st to fill out, and it's become so much easier to fill it out. They've definitely streamlined it, so hopefully families have an easier time with financial aid. We're also happy to answer questions individually for you on financial aid. Just reach out to your school counselor.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. So you have just received lots and lots of information. There's so much to take in. The beauty of having this video is that you can click on it anytime. You can go back to different sections because you'll never remember everything at once. And here we are. You can keep it coming. You can press pause. You can take a time right here before we talk about standardized testing to maybe check that pulse, see how you're doing, check in with yourself. As far as standardized testing goes, there's actually some good news to report. The standardized testing through College Board has changed because of college admission standards. They are choosing to drop the essay. So we don't recommend moving forward that students choose to take the essay when they do the SAT. And at the beginning of next school year, that option will simply be gone. They will just give the option to students for the remainder of this testing year. In addition to that, there will not be any more subject tests. And not everybody knows what a subject test is, but it's a specialty exam that is very similar to an AP exam. So if a student takes AP US History, they take the AP exam. They could also take a subject test that would test their specialty knowledge in that area. And colleges have found that it's just redundant for that. So they are dropping that, which is great because we as a guidance team feel like testing can sometimes be the most stressful part of everything. And to be able to take away and limit some of the testing is huge. It's a huge bonus for everybody. So we're also very excited that we get to offer the SAT here at Freeport High School on a school day. So even though the state of Maine has dropped this assessment, our wonderful school district has decided to test all students and pick up the tab. So on Tuesday, April 13th, all juniors, we will register everybody to take the SAT. It will not have the essay, it will just be the SAT exam. We are covering the costs. You don't have to do anything else about it. We're just really happy that students will have the ability to take this test in the comfort of our own building. And then in addition to that, students are more than welcome to sign up for any other test date that they would like to take at a different location other than this April 13th test date. So super scoring has been around for a little while, and fortunately it's still around. This is a good visual to understand why sometimes we recommend to students that they take the SAT twice. Because one time, let's say your test in April, the reading, you just knocked it out of the park. You scored a 680. Math was a little bit of a struggle. But then if you look at the June test date, the reading was a little bit lower and the math is really high. So the good news is that when colleges view your SAT scores, they're going to take the top reading score, which was a 680, and the top math score, which was a 700, and they combine that into that 1480, which is your super score. So if you test well in April and you're good to go, you don't need to take it again. But if you feel like, I think I could do better, this is just a great reason to go ahead and just try it for the second time, unless you are super anxious about testing. So that does happen. And we try to tell students, take it once and then you're done. You don't have to worry about it. You might not have to send your scores anyway to any school that you apply to. So the pressure is kind of getting lower, which is a good thing. Some students still ask about the ACT. There are two different college admissions exams, the SAT and the ACT. So the ACT was really, it primarily was developed in the Midwest. And so a lot more Western states will be offering it, where the SAT became more of an Eastern thing. And colleges will accept either the SAT or the ACT. They have no preference for either one. So usually we recommend to students that they don't worry about taking the ACT because it's just another exam to have to take, and you have to give up another Saturday, where we have found in the past that there really isn't much of a difference in scores for students. Some students might score a little bit better in the ACT if they're really unhappy with their SAT score. But our experience has showed that it really is not a drastic difference. So we don't generally recommend it, but we totally support students if they feel like they want to go for it. So that is an option. So lastly is the testing schedule. The good news is that this is a key component of the junior meetings that all three of us counselors have with our students. So we like to meet at least once, one-on-one, and we talk specifically to a plan with the student specific goals in mind, where they see themselves going. Part of this is to come up with a plan so that they know that they are set, they know what they need to do to take tests, when to sign up. Yeah, it's all part of it. So I guess the considerations on here with the spring and fall athletic schedule, I think we don't have to worry about that this spring, and hopefully we will have to worry about it in the fall. If students sign up for a test that is, let's say, on a Saturday in October, and they find that they have their varsity sport has a match or a game at the same time, we can reschedule it for students. They can take it on an alternate date. So there are ways that we can work around that. But I think for now, I think we're pretty good. So thank you. And hopefully that has answered most of your questions about testing.
So now we wanted to move on to give you an idea about a timeline. And as you'll see at the top, a complete schedule is located in the Google Classroom. Towards the end of the presentation, there will be a link for students to join. We have a junior college classroom that is filled with resources for students and parents to help with the entire college process and getting through this spring. So here's just a quick timeline. Again, there's more resources in that Google Classroom. So the first step in February is we encourage all juniors to schedule a meeting with your school counselor. This doesn't mean that we have to have your meeting in February, but we should really work to schedule something. These tend to be a little bit of longer meetings, and so students typically will meet with us for the first time in February, March, and sometimes April. We also suggest that you, in February, will go through the Google College Classroom with your parents online and look at some of the resources and ask some questions when you go in for your junior meeting with your counselor. You also can use February to start researching for colleges. And again, there are some great online resources. You can use us for some ideas of some good fit schools, and the library has some resources as well. And finally, in February, as Ms. Rogg just mentioned, creating a testing schedule could be a great idea for some of you. And again, we don't want to cause any sort of additional anxiety surrounding this because so many schools are test optional right now, and it really depends on the student. So this is something that would be great to have you work with us one-on-one to think about what would be a testing schedule that really will work for you and help to reduce some of the anxiety surrounding that. In March, traditionally students will start arranging for some college visits, sometimes for spring break. During a pandemic, obviously this might look a little bit differently, but it might be a good idea to start Googling if you've started coming up with a list of some schools and maybe going on some campus tours and potentially even scheduling some early interviews. A lot of students don't interview until the fall, so please don't let that throw you off seeing it in March. Again, it really depends on each student. Keep researching in March and then think about registering for some of the later SAT and/or ACT tests if this is part of your testing schedule. In April, as Ms. Rogg already mentioned, all juniors will be taking the SAT on Tuesday, April the 13th. And there is an opportunity in April to register for either the May or June ACT or SAT tests, if that is something on your plan. And again, keep researching colleges, seeing if you can go on some college visits or at least doing some online. And finally, kind of confirming what are you going to do over the summer in terms of some of your college research process. So the next step for parents, we like to put in a little bit of a parent tip because I think sometimes parents are really, there is some anxiety surrounding this. This is a huge thing for students and a big transition for everybody going off to college. So the next steps and what we like to say to parents is think about these 3 words: encourage, discuss, and confirm. Colleges really like to see students take the lead in the college application process. And it's great if parents can be on the side encouraging, discussing, confirming, being cheerleaders, and helping students, but not taking over the process. So we are hoping that parents will encourage your students to set appointments with their school counselor. This is really a great first step in this process so that we can work with your students and talk about their dreams and aspirations and plans for college, and hopefully we can answer a lot of the questions that they'll have after this presentation. If you can help encourage your student to look over the information in their college folder, this is all gone online to our Google Classroom. We also will have some folders in our office for people who like to get that paper copy. So if your student wants to have some of the college Google Classroom printed, we are happy to do that for them and give them a physical folder from our office. Discuss and confirm times to take your student on college visits. Often students need parents to kind of help them with this and figure out it's sort of a little bit scary to do this on your own. So this would be great if you can discuss and confirm this with your student. And finally, to discuss and confirm your student's ACT or SAT testing plan. So once your student meets with us in the guidance office, this would be a great time to regroup with your student and figure out what they've come up with for a plan. So the next steps for this as well for parents is to check your email for electronic copies of documents. We will send out some documents, actually will have come with this presentation link, and periodically we will send out more documents to parents. Again, please reach out to your school counselor if for some reason you feel like you need more information or have further questions.
And students, here are your next steps. So the first thing we would like you to do is to join our Google Classroom and check out the resources we have for you. As Mrs. Pierce said, we have lots of paper copies of the documents that are there. So you can feel free to swing by the guidance office anytime. But if you're not able to come by, then they are right at your fingertips there. Your next step after you join Google Classroom is to set up an appointment with your school counselor. These appointments are so helpful to us and we hope they're super helpful to you. We just like to know where you're at, and where you're at, you know, it's going to look different for all of you. But we really enjoy connecting with you this spring and just getting a sense of where you are. And that way we can better assist you. And then after that, we want you to look over the information on the Google Classroom or in your college folder, and then register for your SAT. And again, this is your additional SAT, because don't forget that we have already got you all set to go for April 13th, this school day SAT right here at Freeport High School. Here's how you join our Google Classroom. Again, this is a really great resource for you. You have become so familiar with using Google Classroom this year. And so we're another one, and we would love to have you join ours. There's going to be lots of great information here. You can also find links on how to set appointments with us. We may post some extra articles or other things that may be of interest to you. So please just keep checking that Junior College Planning Classroom. And then here are the next upcoming events that we'll be offering. So I mentioned earlier that there'll be the Financial Planning with Bill Smith. This is going to be Tuesday, March 30th at 6 p.m. and it will be via Zoom. You can sign up online and an email invite will follow. And then RSU 5 Community Programs is offering a 3-night series on the college process. It's geared toward parents. There is an announcement within our announcements that we send out each day. And then if you would like additional information, we encourage you to reach out to the RSU 5 Community Programs. And we would just like to thank you so much for watching our presentation. We just can't stress enough to you that we are here for you, that wherever you are at is where you need to be right now. And we are so happy to support you as little or as much as you need. Please reach out to either Dana Clark, Liz Pierce, Alexis Rogg. We are the 3 school counselors here at Freeport High School, and we will do our best to get you through. Thank you so much.